In 1999, Morpheus offered Neo a choice between a red pill and a blue pill. In 2018, this country fractured between red and blue. In 2022, I'm here to tell you that if you really want the truth, more voters are neither red or blue. Yet, they have no representation, no choice, and no options. They have to choose between candidates chosen by the red people or the blue people. I'm David Esrati, and I'm running for Congress as an American, as in red, white, and blue. I'm a veteran, an activist, and a small businessman. I'm asking you to join me in reminding the professional politicians in Congress who their bosses are. I support ranked choice voting, campaign finance reform, and a verified voter information system, all so we can stop having the best politicians money can buy. It's time to elect a veteran who will work for you, no matter what color they want to label you. Please go to electesrati.com and learn more. I'm David Esrati, and I approve this message. Jurassic Park, you thought those little baby dinosaurs were cute until they turned into out-of-control carnivores. That's sort of what happens to government when we elect people based on very expensive advertising campaigns and propaganda. I'm David Esrati. I'm a veteran and a small businessman running for Congress. You don't want professional ad people and pollsters to sway your vote. All those hot-button issues like gun control, abortion, borders are all politicized to stop you from voting rationally. And thinking rationally seems to be in short supply these days. Most Americans have been voting against their own best self-interest for a long time because we've allowed money to buy our leaders. 1 million Americans died in the last 2 years because our leaders couldn't lead. It wasn't that hard. Mask, distance, test, and then vaccinate. In an instant, we had billions to spend on healthcare for COVID, when for years we've been told we can't provide healthcare for everyone equally in this country. That's an unintended consequence of the pandemic. If you think about it, our government can pretty much do whatever it wants, or what the people who buy our politicians tell our leaders to do. We also had a ton of money to prop up businesses. The next thing you know, it turns out that a living wage was not only possible, but necessary. As a small businessman who won't sell you out to corporate interests and lobbyists, I can tell you that it's time to fully understand the consequences of companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Google and their effect on small business, and to remind you that small business is the #1 creator of jobs in this country. So this next election, don't trust this ad or any other political ad. Do your homework and think before you vote. It's time to put this ad man in Congress because I know that the best advertising is based on the truth, not the size of the budget or payola. Or you can just vote based on who has the money to buy their way into Congress and live with the consequences. I'm David Esrati, and I approve this message. Hi, I'm David Esrati, and I screwed up and I didn't get the proper title into the live stream before we turned it on. So no, we're not talking about the Senate again, and I hope that you know that. I see I've got my trusty two, whoever you two are. Please feel free to step up and say hello. But today we're talking about internet trolls, we're talking about whistleblowing, we're talking about free speech, and the First Amendment. And this is a subject that I know firsthand thanks to Mike Turner. Mike was conducting secret meetings of the Dayton City Commission. And when I say secret meetings, I mean they had, by charter, a Wednesday meeting where they were supposed to conduct the city's business. That's what the charter says. Once a week, conduct the city's business. And for years, they had been having a second meeting without telling anybody about it. The way they would do this is they would use the emergency notification system, which was for things like, you know, if we had a tornado or a flood or a fire or riots, they have a way by sending a fax out back in those days to everyone that it has to be on a distribution list and giving 24 hours notice. So they would send out a notice at 5:30 on Friday about a meeting they were going to have on Monday. And they'd either have a morning breakfast or a lunch, and they'd do all the business of the city in that meeting and pretend like it never happened. I'd been going to Dayton City Commission meetings for years, and I never knew about these Monday meetings. Until the reporter Laura Bischoff called me one day and said, "What do you think about this?" And I said, "What?" "Well, the commission had a meeting and they discussed ways of limiting citizen participation at the meetings." I said, "What meeting? I was there last Wednesday." "Oh, no, the work session they have on Mondays." I'm like, "What work session?" "Oh, they have it every Monday. They send out a notice on Friday night at 5:30. I'm like, news to me. Literally, the newspaper never thought this was a story. And I said, "So what'd they do?" She said, "Well, they had discussed 28 different ways to stop you from standing there with a sign, or, how to turn the cameras off, etc." I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll fax you the document." So she faxed me this one-page document that had all the ways they were talking about limiting things, including shutting off the cameras during public speaking, rearranging the camera so you couldn't see me in the background, because I used to sit to the right of the podium. The camera was here to hit the podium, and I'd sit over here because no city official sat there. They didn't want to get caught on camera sleeping. No sleeping over here. So I'd sit there by myself. Now they line up all the chiefs and everybody else right there to fill it in so it looks like the meeting's full, and also to make sure they keep them from falling asleep. But back in those days, they didn't. And what had happened was the previous week I had gone to the commission and used a big sign to show how the waste collectors under Tom Ritchie and AFSCME had been getting paid for 56 hours when only doing about 30 hours of work a week. And that my neighborhood, we were spending weekends out with these guys, getting time and a half, picking up the trash that they didn't pick up because they had what was called a make out and quit policy. So the trash collectors would show up at 6:30, they get on their trucks, and then they would literally jog and go as fast as they could so they could be done with their route by 11 a.m. and hit the rec center by 11:30 and play basketball. So I'm showing each one the week before on this giant time card, filling it out, totaling it up, and they cut me off at 3 minutes. I said, "Don't worry, I'll be back the next week." And I was going to have the time card with me. So I had showed up. I read this thing with Laura. I discussed it with her, and I said, "It's pretty obvious they don't want to see the faces of the people they represent." I mean, one of the things they were asking for, and this is, they wanted like congressional testimony for you to write in exactly what you're going to say and send it in 24 hours in advance so they could approve or disapprove and yank you off the podium if you varied from what you said. And so my response showed up in the Tuesday paper saying it's obvious they don't want to see the faces of the people they represent. And I showed up that morning, went to sit in my exact same place. I was wearing a pair of black pants, a black shirt, and I had called the chief of police the night before and told him I was going to don a black balaclava, a full hood, a ninja mask, once the meeting began because they didn't want to see my face. And he said, "You do whatever you want." So I'm sitting there in the meeting. I pull it on. This is after I stood for the Pledge of Allegiance and that the invocation. And I'm sitting there with my time card in my normal seat. They have a speaker, Jane Forrest. She's at the front desk, at the front podium, and she's talking. I take my glasses off. I pull the hood on. I put my glasses back on, and I sit perfectly still. And that is all of you who wear glasses and have worn a mask now. What happened every time I exhaled, my glasses would fog up, and then they'd go away, and I'm not moving. Turner immediately starts to sweat bullets and laughs. And then he calls over to Maureen Perot. They go, psst, psst. Maureen walks to the back of the room, talks to the police. Major Stusik comes up and walks over to me and says, David, can you step outside and talk to me for a minute? I say, sure, Mark. We go out, we walk to the back. He said, can you take the mask off? I said, sure. He said, you can't wear a mask in City Commission chambers. I said, excuse me, there's a law against headgear? If there is, you'd have to arrest Bootsy Neal for some of those Chiquita banana hats she wears. I'm sorry, what are you going to charge me with? And he said, I don't know, but I've been told if you wear that mask in there, I'm going to have to arrest you. I said, well, that's fine. I'm going to go back in. But remember, this is symbolic speech. It's protected by the First Amendment. It's a protest. This is a public meeting, a public place, a public space. You can wear whatever you want. So I go back, sit down. Next thing you know, 4 police come. Major Stusik, the chief, Ron Lowe, and 2 officers, one of which was Alan Howard, otherwise known as Opie. And I'd known Alan for a long time, and we'd always talked friendly, but we weren't real close. Anyways, we get out in the hall, and this time all the cameras come out and for the TV stations, and we're having a discussion in the hallway, and the doors are open, and Ron's telling me, you can't wear that. Excuse me, Chief Lowe. And I'm like, what's the charge? He said, I don't know, but I'm going to arrest you. I said, look, if I was a black Muslim woman wearing a burqa, you wouldn't be saying anything. And he doesn't have an answer. I said, what are you going to charge me with? He doesn't have an answer. He says, you step foot in that room with that hood on, I'm going to have to arrest you. I took one giant step backwards. I said, like this. Turn around, put the cuffs on. Alan takes me down to the jail. They don't charge me. I get out about 6-7 hours later when a friend bails me out. Had one bologna sandwich and moldy orange while I'm in there. And got talked poorly to by some 20-something-year-old jailer that didn't know his head from his you-know-what. I saw Loretta Cephas in there. She's like, Mr. Esrati, Mr. Esrati. If you don't know who Loretta Cephas is, she had been arrested the night before at a school board meeting for doing something they didn't like. And by the way, Jen, hi. Thanks for announcing yourself. So 3 days later, they charged me with 4 fourth-degree misdemeanors. Those are the lowest grade misdemeanors. One was for disruption of a lawful meeting. One was for conduct of persons at a public meeting. Again, all I did was sit there. I didn't make any noise, any commotion, anything else. And then the last 2 were trespassing, 2 counts of trespassing. Somehow it became illegal for me to be in a public meeting. And the law department tried to, tell me I was wrong, and I hired lawyers. And we went through 5 different courts, with me winning every time over 2.5 years. And finally, before the city would appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, settled for $100,000, most of which went to the lawyers. So I do know something about the First Amendment. It's why when I got arrested at the Dayton Metro Library for taking photos in a public place, I knew they were wrong. And the settlement there, without any lawyers, was $40,000 that I negotiated on my own. So I do know about the First Amendment. I do understand the protections needed for whistleblowers. I do understand the validity of anonymity and the ability to speak and say things without having to worry about being punished. However, what we have had happen with the internet is that anybody and everybody can say anything they want about anybody and not be held liable. Or we like to look the other way. Now, there are some things you can't say on the internet, okay? And there's some things you can't do. There was a fascinating article in the New York Times on Sunday about a man who actually happened to be a software engineer and his wife, who during COVID, during the pandemic and the lockdown, took photos of their son's genitals to send to the pediatrician because their son had an infection. The doctor got the pictures, the doctor made a diagnosis, sent an antibiotic prescription, and it cleared up. What didn't clear up was Google decided that through artificial intelligence or through analysis that they had made child porn and immediately shut his account down. And with Google, that meant not only his email, not only his calendars, not only his 2-factor authentication methods, and his phone, because he was using Google Fi, all at once. And he thought, this should be pretty simple. Have the police investigate, explain things, and they'd get it all back. Well, the police came, investigated, said it wasn't child porn, and it's valid reason. Google did not give him his phone number back. They did not give him his access back. They basically, judge, jury, decided that he was a child pornographer. I've had a strike on my site, on my YouTube channel, for talking about something with free speech that YouTube deemed inappropriate, and I had to challenge it, and then they cleared it. I also got in trouble because I have 8mm video that was shot of me and my cousins in England in 1967, where we're in the bathtub, that I tried to share with my cousins, and they seem to think that was child pornography too. They've also tagged people for having photographs of kids running naked through a sprinkler. If that's child pornography, I'm sorry. There are plenty of classic paintings from the Renaissance with naked people in them, naked babies, naked women. That's not pornography either. So, we have censors. We have people that are in charge of these things. And one of the things that happens online these days is trolls. Basically, it's okay to say anything you want on the internet without fear of repercussion, because you can have basically an unverified, untraceable account. And you can say and post whatever you want. You can create a group. You can create a hate group. And Facebook says this is not against their terms of service. I should know, because there's at least 2 of them on Facebook. I tried to set up one with the same sort of format, attacking a local judge, just to see what would happen. And of course they said, oh, this goes against our policy. We can't do that. So then there comes a lawyer in town who I exposed. His name is Aaron Hartley, who on a rant on Facebook one night posted that he wanted to put a bullet in the brain of a magistrate on Facebook. And the account's been blocked or taken down and anything. But if I said I wanted to put a bullet in the brain of a judge, and I confirmed this with the judge, he says the FBI would be on my doorstep immediately asking to see my guns and probably take me to jail. So we have different standards in this country. Now, Facebook got accused of helping engineer election fraud or election outcomes by meddling in our election by posting false information and amplifying things on Facebook that weren't true. And I read in today's paper, the New York Times, that they had the company they bought, which has a application called CrowdTangle. It's able to trace the spread of a meme or untruthful information across the channels on Facebook. They had stopped development of it, and in fact are talking about discontinuing it at the time when we're facing another election where all kinds of wild claims have taken place. I have somebody who went on a rant for 24 hours, kept posting over and over and over, complaining about my description of what happened at the Greene County Democratic Party picnic, and called me every name in the book: a misogynist, a racist, a homophobe, I forget what else. I mean, it went on and on, saying I was unfit for office. And people tried to talk to him and explain, what you're doing is you're backing Mike Turner. Oh, no, I'm not. Well, the choices are me or Mike Turner. Oh, that's not it. Esrati's not fit for this. He's not fit for that. I've got proof. And using a lot of the politically correct language. Apparently he had problems when I used alliteration to complain about the Dayton cops pulling a cripple out of the car by his hair. Now, I could have said a physically challenged, I could have talked about a disabled person, but because I used the word cripple, apparently I had offended his sensibilities. But the idea of cops cripple car had a flow to it. I'm a writer. I chose that word because alliteration. It doesn't matter that I was against the idea that any police officer should be able to pull anybody out of a car for a window tint violation. You give them a ticket and you send them on your way. He grabbed this man, a black man, by his braids and drug him out of the car. This was a paraplegic who uses a wheelchair. As somebody who went to Wright State and has known more than a few people who are paraplegics, quadriplegics, and has worked in a hospital on a medical ward, I can tell you that you have to be incredibly careful around people who have lost the sense of feeling in their extremities, because it's very easy to break things, tear things without them knowing it. It is possible to dislocate joints. It's possible to break bones. They don't have the normal muscles there. So it was wrong what the cop did. But what was more wrong to this idiot was that I had said the word cripple. This guy went on and on and on and on and on and on. I couldn't report him. The only options I have is to block him, and that is blocking, quote, free speech. And so I'm wondering how long it'll be before he decides to sue me or say I've somehow done something that's politically incorrect, which is block a citizen from my Facebook page. Well, here's the thing. I don't own that Facebook page. I own my website. And on Esrati.com, pretty much I leave almost all the comments except when they attack other commenters or when they say something that is absolutely wrong and doesn't belong on my website either. But I've been very lenient about this. But this guy was claiming he was going to boost this message and he was going to do this and that. But the thing is, nobody knows who he is. They don't know his name. They don't know where he works or where he lives. He could be a Russian troll. He found that very offensive because his profile photo is blue and yellow to show solidarity with the Ukrainians. But if I was a Russian agent working for the Internet Agency, which was the name of their firm that was meddling in the election, I'd pretend to be a Ukrainian supporter too, to throw people off. The reality is, there are limits to free speech. There have always been limits to free speech. And there's a reason for it. You can't run into a stadium and start screaming fire and let people run out and do a Who concert and end up with people dead. You can't go to a city commission meeting and speak anytime you want and scream and say anything you want because you will be asked to leave. There aren't controls to ask people to leave on Facebook. They're just crude ones. Lock the doors. There's no way of reporting it and saying this is harassment when they post over and over and over and over the same things. There's no provision for any kind of support for people who are trying to have meaningful conversations and are being interrupted by a troll. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in the ability to say things, and some things need to be said anonymously. But for me personally, I've said everything publicly. I post publicly. I sign my name to it. If I can't say it to your face that you're ugly and your mother dresses you funny, I won't say it. If I'm going to say it in print, I'm going to say it to your face and I'm going to sign my name. Generally, I don't do things like that. I say things like, you accepted a bribe and then you wore a wire and then you ran for office for re-election with the full knowledge that you were going to resign once you got elected. That's the sort of thing that I like to say. Or that, no, it wasn't a random occasion, one-time thing at the jail, Sheriff Plummer, when one of your, at that point, captains had a woman in 7-point restraints and pepper sprayed her with no defense at all. And you said it was random. And I said, here's another video of your officers doing the exact same thing. Those are no jokes. And I've been saying things like this and pointing out things like this for a long time because the First Amendment gives us the right to question, to call out. But it doesn't give us the right to harass and go on and on and on about the same thing. You can't just keep repeating yourself because you can't, the platform allows it. So, at some point, if elected, and I get to ask Mark Zuckerberg to the stand, and I get to ask the people from Alphabet to the stand, and I ask them about how their algorithm and TikTok and all the rest of these, how their algorithm keeps focusing things in on people, doesn't give other people the ability to counter effectively, that the algorithm feeds people bad information just because it gets attention. Those sorts of things we have to address, and we have to figure out a real system. And I truly believe the number one thing we can do is start, for political speech at least, if you want to criticize somebody who is on the ballot and running for office, if you're going to do it on their page, you have to have some sort of verified ID to be able to go and question a negative so that we can go back. Because saying somebody is a child molester should have repercussions if in fact they are not. So, I don't see any questions from anybody in the audience. I would be happy to answer them. I would be happy to entertain some views. Again, I'm sorry that I didn't get it posted up for the notification, but we'll have it fixed for when people find it and search and review the video. But I did notify through Facebook and through Twitter that that was the subject of the day. So there you have it. So upcoming some things. We're waiting for a package from Shepard Fairey of what we're going to have to auction off to our supporters. So if you haven't made a donation yet, I'm going to make sure that even if you only donated $3, you can win a Shepard Fairey poster. And I don't have all that many donors, so the odds are pretty good. Then we will have a fundraiser of some sort at a nice establishment where you can have nice finger foods and drinks and hear a musical act or see a comedian or listen to some people speak. And there you will have a chance at an auction to buy some signed Shepard Fairey prints. For those of you who don't know who Shepard Fairey is, yes, you do. He's the one that did Hope and Change for the Obama campaign in the red and blue style that's been copied over and over and over. Very famous artist, really nice guy. Luckily, somebody that I've had correspondence with for a number of years. Haven't actually met him in person, although I have been to his studio, and he is supporting this campaign. We're still trying to get some other guest speakers here. We should hopefully have some soon and have some more interesting than just me on here. And we are working hard to get the campaign moving and get money flowing in so that we can give Mikey a real run for his money. He's going to spend ungodly amounts more than me. I'm sure he'll smear me as well. Hell, if the Democratic Party would, why wouldn't the Republican Party? So expect for things to get dirty, and it's fine because basically I'm bulletproof. You can't get at me through my kids, my wife, because I don't have any. You touch my dog, I'll kill you. That's all there is to it, okay? But other than that, there's not much you can do to me that hasn't been done already. Anyways, hey, Mark. Yeah, it can get more interesting than just me. Me and somebody else gets interesting, and I've got a couple people on tap to come in that I think people will find interesting. Because like it or not, I still know a lot of people in this community, and some of them like me. And apparently a couple of you do because you sat through this whole thing. But we'll be back here tomorrow at 4, same place, same channel. And we hope to see you. Please remember to make a donation, spread the word, and thank you for watching. Thank you.